Going to be talking about the systems of control. This is a bit more nuanced and accurate than the laws of power or Professor Zhang. This is the real stuff, and it's not fun. The way current systems of control have operated for a few thousand years is a pyramid scheme, like a Ponzi scheme. So there's people at the top, which are a very small percentage of the total population, and they have control of layers below them. So they give favors to the group below them, who then use bribery and extortion and blackmail to control the next layer, and that layer just exploits everyone else beneath them directly. And then most people are at the bottom. That's the pyramid scheme. And that pyramid scheme for almost all societies has been synonymous with patriarchy. I'm putting it in scare quotes because we use the word patriarchy, but then we confuse what group of people that applies to. Patriarchy has never been all men. It's not all men who are at the top, because it's a pyramid. There's only a small group of men, the Epstein billionaires, who have all the money and the power and the privilege. And then it's a trickle down where they give some of that to people who obey them, who use those resources to leverage people below them, who are then told to obey by exploiting everyone else. It's never been all men at the top of the patriarchy. And the feminists 50 years ago were very clear about this point. You can go back and read. They were saying very specifically, most men suffer under the patriarchy. The patriarchy is a small group of men at the top. And for hundreds of years, since they started making fast ships, that small group of men has been older white men. You can go to China 1,000 years ago, it was older Chinese men. Many different cultures, it was the older men who were at the top, who were in charge of the patriarchy. And in all those pre-industrial societies and the early factory cities, most males in the population were expendable and voiceless. They were expected to obey or they were beaten and imprisoned, and they usually died very young without any children. That was most men in most of the patriarchy around the world. Okay, so patriarchy has never meant all men at the top. That hasn't ever happened. There are ways where certain men were given privileges, and those were either cultural norms or institutional or legal systems. So the classic example, which is very upsetting, is that until the mid-70s, men were legally allowed to beat and sexually assault their wives. There are a lot of women who are still alive today who were in those marriages. So it's pretty serious to recognize that's only our recent history. And that's in America and a couple other countries. In most of the places on earth, it's still legal. That still happens all the time. So in most of the countries where most of the people are, women can be abused legally. And in those same countries, it is not all men at the top. Don't kid yourself. We have to be honest about the actual structure of patriarchy to understand why it's been persisting and how to get rid of it and what to replace it with. If you're living in a fantasy where it's all men at the top and all men constantly abusing, then the solution seems to be to get rid of all men. I was reading Valerie Solana's Scum Manifesto when I was 12 years old. I'm familiar with that conversation. And I'm also a fan of Ella Baker and Aaron Pizzey. and Helen Thomas and Judith Love Cohen and Florence Nightingale. It's important to remember what Ella Baker said. In the civil rights movement, there were a number of reverends and pastors who were gathering to have a meeting where they were planning to decide to exclude women from leadership in the civil rights movement. So Ella showed up and she told them specifically, if you won't give equality, you don't get it. She's right. Aaron Pizzey, this is another important story to recognize how things have changed in the conversation from the feminists of the 60s to 80s compared to the TikTok feminists today. Aaron Pizzey was the founder of the Battered Women's Shelter. So she's a hero. And she was running the Battered Women's Shelter and expanding it around the world for decades. And she wanted to understand what was causing this cycle of abuse. So she would talk to the women there, do a lot of observational learning. Excuse me. And she was interviewed by a magazine whose readership wanted to hate men as a category. An entire demographic is just instinctively, naturally, permanently evil. That's what they wanted to conclude, to feel superior and victimized and justified. So the readership and the magazine were operating under two critical conceits. And in the interview, Aaron Pizzey attacked both of those conceits. They wanted to claim that women are always the victim, no matter what. And women are the only victim, no one else. And what Aaron pointed out, the founder of the Battered Women's Shelter, she said, no. Women do also do horrible things. It's not all women, but there are women who do horrible things. And there are other people who are victimized too. In particular, and this one should hit your heart pretty hard. This is a gut punch. Aaron Pizzey would see these women bring their children to the Battered Women's Shelter with them. They're escaping domestic violence, and this was started back in the 60s when it was still legal for men to beat and sexually assault their wives. And women didn't have bank accounts or credit cards, and they didn't have income opportunities, easy jobs to enter or higher pay. So Aaron's seeing these women come in, and the women are saying, what do I do? And Aaron's like, well, there's not a lot you can do. You can stay here for a little while. So that's heartbreaking. But Aaron would see these women bring their kids. And these women are trying to escape abuse from their husband. And she'd see these women in the Battered Women's Shelter beating their own children. So Aaron said, no, it's not women are always the victim and women are the only victim. No, it's not. That's a lie. And you're telling yourself that lie so you can get victim status, which is an elite privilege, so that you can justify abusing an entire category of people as a demographic. You want to hate a whole demographic. And the magazine that was interviewing her, they didn't like that. And the readership hated her for it. And so people who were reading that magazine voiced out loud. They said, we take credit. They admitted it after they put a car bomb in Aaron Pizzey's car. And it blew up while she was in it. A group of women who claimed to be feminist lit up a car bomb in Aaron Pizzey's car, the founder of the Battered Women's Shelter, because she had the guts to say, no, you're not always a victim. Sometimes you're the perpetrator. And you're definitely not the only victim. You victimized your kids sometimes. So they wanted to kill her to prove that they're such victimy. And she lived. Erin Pizzey survived the attack. So the same group of women did it again. And Erin Pizzey survived. Because she's a saint. She has guardian angels. That same group of women, they even killed Erin's dog. Does that sound like they're such victims? So now Erin Pizzey is a men's rights activist. And it's those women who did it. You need to blame those women. Because they are poison to the feminist movement. They are fighting hardest to keep the patriarchy. Because every time there's a manosphere patriarch, the excuse he gives is pointing to women like that. That's called a foil. When someone's acting badly, and so they discredit their side. As long as you allow women like that in the feminist movement, then all the patriarchies in other countries say, look at what happens when they have feminism. So you got to get real. In most patriarchy, throughout most of history, the patriarch was the king or the emperor, and he had a group of other men beneath him. These were the nobles who swore fealty, and they would fight in battle with him. And the way they did that is they'd go to all the farmers at the bottom, and they'd grab the farmers' sons, and they'd say to the farmer's son, we are going to throw you in prison if you don't march into this other country and kill people for us. And those farmer sons died. Most men in patriarchy die in salt mines and front lines. And if you won't admit that, then you will never get another male ally. So the guys who are making less than $80,000 a year, and they're short, and they're ugly, they don't have a college education, are you going to tell me that they're the guys at the top who are abusing you? Are you going to tell me they're the top of the patriarchy? Because we both know that's a lie. The patriarchy has only ever privileged a small group of people. You got the guys at the top, their henchmen, and then here's an important point to understand about the patriarchy, and this was said loud in the 70s. There's a group of women who are serving the patriarch. The patriarch is the one at the top, and the patriarchy is the social and institutional structure that feeds the patriarch. And there's a group of women who serve the patriarch. Those women are the patriarchy. So let's look at the features of the women who serve the patriarch. She is willing to allow the patriarch to abuse her in return for some sprinkle. She is willing to be the mouthpiece for the apologies. She's the apologist of the patriarch. If you look at interviews with Donald Trump's vice president for years, it's a woman. She was the one running his entire business enterprise. He didn't know how. If you look at the women who say they only want to date a rich man and then they tolerate his abuse, that is the patriarchy. She is what patriarchy is. Because she's willing to get a little bit of dripple from the rich man who exploits women, just so she gets her cut. if you're going on a date with a rich guy and he buys you an expensive dinner and then you have sex with him, you're serving the patriarch. You are the patriarchy. And if you don't want to admit that, then the feminist movement's going to have to do it for you. Because you don't get to claim you're feminist when you're giving the rich guy your body and your obedience just for his slice, just a slice of his money. So I'll keep handling this in another series, but that's to get you started.